Hello, everyone, and welcome to RePlay 2019. This is Beverly Smith, and I am the Senior Program Director for LISC Sports and Recreation. And we are going to move through the presentation to let you know all of the threshold requirements for the RePlay program, and then at the end we will take any questions that you have. So first, what is RePlay? The RePlay program is a national effort led by ESPN and the Local Initiative Support Corporation, and its purpose and goal is to revitalize vacant lots into safe places for sports, recreation, and play in low to moderate income communities, specifically in Atlanta, Georgia, Detroit, Michigan, Oakland, California, and Toledo, Ohio. With financial support being provided by ESPN and Under Armour, along with technical assistance from LISC, RePlay will provide grants to local community-based groups and other qualified organizations for planning grants and for support of early-stage projects, support of capital improvements to close funding gaps for projects that are already in an implementation phase. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move into the presentation. So there are two levels of funding for RePlay. Planning grants of $10,000, which would cover community outreach and organizing around vacant lots in your neighborhood that could be repurposed for play and for community use. Planning grants can be used for architectural design plans and for any pre-development activities that need to occur in order to implement a project. Implementation grants are up to $75,000, and they do require a dollar-for-dollar match, and that can be used for materials, for labor, and equipment to transform a vacant space that there are already plans in place for into a play space. Organizational eligibility. Projects must be located in Atlanta, Georgia, Detroit, Michigan, Oakland, California, or Toledo, Ohio. Must be a community-based organization serving low to moderate income community. Should be in existence for minimally 3 years. So if you're a small neighborhood group or block association or community association, you may want to partner with a nonprofit in your community that meets these requirements. And you must have a 501c3 tax-exempt status with at least one full-time staff member that can, and this is particularly for the oversight of the implementation grants that we need to see this because we want to know who's going to oversee the construction of the site and who's going to be responsible for that. Selection criteria. We're going to look at the feasibility of the project, and this relates more to the implementation grant than it does to the planning grant. Impact upon the neighborhood. What is the current status and the current impact that these vacant sites are having on the neighborhood now? Are they filled with crime? Are they attracting negative issues in the neighborhood, blight? What will be the impact if granted an implementation grant, or what is the plan that you have to impact the neighborhood in a different way with the lot that you're looking at? The capacity of the organization and its partners. Do you have capacity to organize around and create a collaborative problem-solving plan around these sites, the vacant sites? Who are your partners? What is their capacity? Project readiness. This really applies to the implementation grants. How ready are you to proceed? Do you already have a plan in place? When do you see the project moving forward? And then security, maintenance, and safety of the play space. And this, again, applies more to the implementation grant. How, once the space is renovated, how do you plan to protect it and sustain it and make it safe? Match funding, dollar for dollar match funding, and this, again, only applies to the implementation grants of $75,000, so that if you apply to us for an implementation grant, the expectation is that you already have a plan in place, you've already costed it out, and you have a timeline, and that you have match funding to cover whatever the $75,000 will not cover, so that at the end of the day it's a completed project. Planning grants do not require match funding, but they will require you to send us a plan and show us what you have, a detailed plan of what you've done. You know, have you had community meetings, and what your plans ultimately look like. Application procedures, a cover sheet, one page with your organization name, address, email, phone number, contact person, project request, whether you're applying for a planning grant or an implementation grant, and your project description, which is basically how you intend to use the funds that you're awarded. The narrative should be 3 typed pages at the max. We would like to, in the narrative, to be included a description of your organization, description of your neighborhood, description of the project or the lots that you're looking at, and the impact that the project will have on the community and future sustainability plans. And then just let us know how you learned about the RePlay program. Attachments. We need organizational attachments, IRS 501c3 letter showing that you have a 501c3 status, any audited financial statements, IRS 990, a contact list of your board of directors, and an IRS W-9 form in terms of, and that's for the organizations that are actually applying for the grants, so that if you're a neighborhood group and you're partnering with a nonprofit in your neighborhood, they should submit these documents to us. In terms of project attachments, your project planning and budget timeline, match funding commitment, and that is specific for the implementation grants, because the grants of $75,000 require a dollar for dollar match. Detailed maintenance plan and budget, how you plan to maintain the space after you've renovated it. And again, this is for implementation grants. Landscape and design plans, again, that would be for implementation grants. Environmental reports, and we would like to see that not only for the implementation grants, but for those who are just looking at lots and gathering to plan. If there are any environmental needs that need to be remediated, we'd like to see that. And letters of support from community organizations that are supporting you, local businesses, local elected officials, and any joint use agreements that you will need, assuming that the lots do not belong to you specifically, but maybe city-owned lots or lots of a private owner. We want to see that you have permission to plan and to do something on these lots. For further information, you can contact myself, Beverly Smith. My number is listed here. I'm the Senior Program Director. Kwame Flaherty, who is our Senior Program Officer for LISC Sports and Recreation. Crystal Hunter, who is our Program Assistant, or Mark Conyers, who is our Senior Administrative Assistant. And with that, we are going to open it up for questions. I have one question that says, can we apply for both a planning grant and an implementation grant? Ideally, no. If you do not have a plan, implementation grants are given to those who already have plans in place, and so that means that you've already been working on this before you apply to our project. If you do not have a plan, you will not be given an implementation grant. So the planning grant is specifically so that you can organize in your community around a specific project. And what you can do is in a future round, you can come back to us and apply for an implementation grant. In terms of how long you need to complete an implementation project, you would have 18 months from the signing of the grant agreement for implementation projects, and you will have 12 months to complete your plan for those applying for a $10,000 planning grant. We have a question about when we will make award announcements. We will be making award announcements in mid-July. The deadline for submission is May 15th for submission of proposals. We will then review, take some time to review all of the proposals that we get in. We will make our recommendations to ESPN, and we will evaluate along with ESPN the proposal submissions, and then we will hopefully make award announcements in mid-July. So we have a question, can someone apply for the implementation grant if we have a concept plan in place and then use the development of the full construction ready design plan as match, or do the plans have to be construction as match? Construction ready as match. Yes, you have to be, to apply for an implementation grant, you have to be at that point of actually implementing the project, of constructing the lot. I'm in a national organization that has regions in each of these cities. Are we allowed to submit separately, or does it have to be one grant collectively? I would do it separately for each, because that's how we're going to evaluate it based on the geographies that are listed in the RFP. Are grants awarded to organizations or site location? They're going to be awarded to organizations for the site location that's outlined in your proposal. We have the expectation that the organization applying to us, the funds will be allocated to the specific site that you're demonstrating in your proposal. Yeah, the grant program, the way it works is once you have completed your planning grant and you submit that to us, you will be invited to apply in a future round for an implementation grant. No, the funds can only go through a nonprofit. We have a question about whether funds can go to an individual or nonprofit. Funds will only be awarded to a nonprofit. Will grants be awarded for each of the communities or only a subset? Not quite sure what you mean by that, but the goal of the program is to award grants in each of the areas that is listed in the RFP. We're not sure. This is the second year that we're offering the program. That will be a conversation that we will have. This is basically a pilot program as it stands now, and we will have that discussion with ESPN once we see the response. We don't know how many grants per city. It's going to be based on how many applications we receive, how many proposals, and it's a competitive process because, as you can see, it is between 4 cities, and the strongest proposals will be selected. I think we talked about how long we have to complete projects, planning projects of 12 months from the signing of the grant agreement, 18 months from the signing of the grant agreement for implementation projects. There's a question we have about what kind of match is required. Does it have to be cash? In terms of implementation, ideally it should be cash, but if you have a contractor, a local contractor, or someone on the ground that's willing to assist with the project and not charge you, what you can do is have that contractor issue a letter to us saying that they are willing to donate some of their labor and services and put a price to it, and we can count that. If it's relevant to the actual project, we can count that as match funding. But it has to be relevant to the project. We're looking to see if there are any other questions. Can I call you after this meeting? I have a few questions. Yes, you can do that, or you can email us. The PowerPoint and everything will be emailed to all of the participants in the webcast when it's over, and you will be able to access the recording. Any other questions? I said you have till May 15th to submit your proposals. You can contact the local LISC offices. We have LISC offices on the ground in Detroit, in Oakland, and in Toledo, and you can always call us. Our contact information here in the national office. We have a question about, can we use the grants for the redevelopment of an existing park? No, we're really focused on vacant lots in neighborhoods that are creating blight. Parks generally have a Parks and Rec budget for those kinds of things, and we're not necessarily looking to fund Parks and Rec sites. We are really looking for vacant properties and vacant lots in neighborhoods. So we have a question that says, just to clarify, in order to submit for implementation, we would have to have already submitting a planning application previously? No. To ask for a implementation grant, you already have to have plans, so that if you're applying to us for an implementation grant, then you need to submit your plans of what it is that you intend to do with the vacant lots, and have a budget, and you really should be really at shovel ready at the point of asking for an implementation grant. I'm trying to understand that timing of applying for an implementation grant if a planning grant is successful. So are the funding rounds expected to be annual? We expect that they will be annual, and what will happen is, if you submit a planning grant to us, a plan, if you're approved for a planning grant and you submit your plan to us, we would invite you to apply in the next round for an implementation grant. Can you apply? We have a question about, can you apply for two different sites? Yes, you can, but as I said, you have to demonstrate what it is you're doing at these two different sites, and that there is community cohesion around it and community support. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, as I said, Kwame Flaherty will send out the PowerPoint, and he will email you the link for the webcast. And as I said, you can follow up with us after with questions by email. And it's better, because we're traveling a lot and all of that, that you really send your questions by email, because you get a quicker response than you would by phone. But we will try to return all phone calls, but you can definitely reach out to us if you have further questions that are specific to your area and your project. Thank you all for participating. We look forward to hearing from you. Please reach out to us if you need additional information. Thank you.